All right, folks, here we are in the Collette Tech shop, and we are really excited here because we are just about to release our new camera mount, the Rock2, which is basically our lineup for the GoPro Hero 8. We've done a lot of work on this. We've adopted some things that we've learned from our previous mounts and feedback that we've gotten from other users of our original Rock mount. And so this is going to be an install tutorial for the mount, but first we're going to go over a few features of the mount. As you can see, it's a really sleek, snag resistant design. It's made from a really high durable resin. Got a really nice finish to it. This particular one here is for the G3, and we're going to do our installation on this project helmet here, but we do also make it for the KISS helmet right now. And as time goes on, if there's demand for it, we might do it for some other helmets too. Aside from the snag resistant design, we've also integrated some nice detents on the mating faces here. And they're so small you might not even be able to see them. But what this does is, and you'll see this when we go to the installation, it makes the angle for the camera mount really solid. And it does this without having to crank super tight on the bolts. Literally just finger tight is all you need. But that's a super nice feature. And then of course we have the angle markings here so that you can get a nice repeatable angle for your camera once you find the angle that you like. Going on to the top piece of the mount, very similar to the original Rock mount. We've made it a little bit smaller so it takes up less of a footprint. We've also made the fit to the camera a little bit better. So for some of these snag resistant mounts, if you've used them from even other manufacturers, you'll notice that when you put your camera down in the base, it's actually got a little bit of a rock to it. We've brought in some really high quality machines so that the tolerances are a lot tighter. And then we've also made some adaptations to actually make it a nice press fit for the camera. And so once you set that camera down in this base, there's no wiggle in this camera mount. It's a really nice solid mount. Last but certainly not least, and probably most important, this camera is made, or I'm sorry, this mount is made specifically for the Hero 8. So we do have a cutout or a relief here so that once your camera is in the base, you can actually access the battery and the card without having to remove your camera from the mount. This is super nice. The camera does come out of the mount really easily if you need it to. But for folks that are maybe swapping cards after every jump, this is a super nice feature. The last feature is not necessarily a new feature, but this is a bolt-on mount. So this mount only requires drilling 2 small holes. It goes on with 2 Phillips head screws. So it does come off of the helmet very quickly if you needed to. Literally 30 seconds or less. You can take this off or put it back on the helmet with nothing but a screwdriver. So if you're a tunnel flyer, that's really nice. You don't have to take the camera out of the mount or out of the base in order to do that. You simply just reach into the helmet, take these 2 screws out, and the whole thing will come off together. Super quick, super easy. You could, we'll go over this a little more in the install. It's a flat bottom, so if you like the VHB tape without having to drill holes, you could do that. We're not going to recommend that. That'll be a personal choice you'll have to make, but we'll go over the pros and cons of that when we get to that point in the install tutorial. As far as what you should expect to come in the kit, you'll get everything that you see here. We've got a drill jig to make drilling super accurate and super easy. This is a disposable jig. You'll use it once and then toss it or save it. We've got an alignment bolt, again, one-time use. Comes with a certain size drill bit so that you don't have to search for the right size of drill bit. We have the bolt that actually holds the camera into the mount. Of course, we have the 2 mount pieces here. We have an 1/8 inch Allen head here. This you'll keep in your helmet or in your gear bag. This is what you'll use to tighten down the camera mount. And then this is a removable, a ruler with a removable adhesive on the back. It just makes placement of the camera super easy, not required, but we'll show you how to use it it makes for some really easy to follow instructions. As far as what's not in the kit that you'll have to provide, not required, but certainly helpful, is a flexible tape measure or just any piece of string. We'll show you how to use those. This is for finding the center of your helmet. So if you're comfortable with eyeballing it, you can do that, but this is so easy to do that I would recommend doing this if you can. A marker is a good idea, a screwdriver, and then, of course, your drill. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the installation. The first thing we want to do, of course, is we want to flip our helmet over and remove the top pad, because we're going to drill 2 small holes through the helmet, and we don't want to drill into our pad. The next thing we want to do is we want to take the removable adhesive ruler, and we're going to place it in the center of the helmet, roughly in the center. And if you'll notice, I'm going to place the 0 centimeter mark just barely touching the top of the visor. I'm going to lay it front to back just like this. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to decide where you want the mount to sit on your helmet. You're going to take a marker, and we're going to mark where you want the front of the drill jig to be. On a G3 helmet, I recommend the front of the drill jig should be placed about, roughly 10 to 11 centimeters from the front visor. So I'm going to make a little mark right here, and that tells me that's about 10.5 centimeters from the top of the visor. If you're mounting this on a KISS helmet, we'll post some measurements here as well to give you some recommendations. This is by no means where you have to put it. You could move the mount further forward or further backward depending on the type of flying you do and the angle that you like on your camera. Just, of course, keep in mind that the farther you put the mount towards the front, you're not going to be able to open your visor as far. And then the farther you put it towards the back, the general rule of thumb is that the further back it goes, the more, snaggalicious it kind of gets. So I recommend this 10.5 centimeter mark, and then you'll have to make your own adjustments for your personal use. What we're going to do now is we're going to find the center line of the helmet so that we can get the mount perfectly centered. I'm going to do this first using a flexible tape measure, and then I'll show you the simple string method. So if you have a flexible tape measure, you're going to just draw it across the helmet about where you want the front of your jig to be. And I'm just going to touch this side plate. If you're using a KISS helmet, they don't have quite the same side plates, but just use the visor as a reference. And then I'm going to pull it over to the other side. And this tells me that I have roughly 30 centimeters across the top, and I'm holding this side at the 4 centimeter mark actually. So that tells me that my middle mark is this 19 centimeter mark. So I am going to make a little center mark right at this 19. And I now know that this is the front of my jig, and then I want this to be the center of my jig. Okay, now real quick, let's say you don't have a flexible tape measure. Hopefully you should be able to find a simple piece of string. It could be a piece of string, a small piece of twine, some closing loop material, a pull-up cord, anything you have that you can draw across the helmet. What I'm going to do here is touch the side plate on one side with the string. I'm going to draw it across where I want the mount to be, and I'm going to touch the other side plate, and with that marked, I'm going to cut the string to length. So this string is now exactly the length of the helmet across the top, and what I can do is just fold this string in half, and I'm going to take a marker and just mark the string at that center point. That's exactly halfway. That'll give me a nice center line. And then when I touch a side plate again and draw this across, I should get the same center line. I can now mark that as my center line. Simple string method. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my jig and I'm going to put it in the center where I want my mount to be, and I'm going to drill the 2 holes. Do keep in mind that the holes are at a bit of an angle, and you'll see why here in a minute. So when you're drilling, you want to make sure you let the drill follow that angle in the jig. You don't need to drill it straight up and down, or you'll likely ruin the jig. The jigs that come in the kits are going to have a center mark. We're going to hold that in place. and drill our first hole. Okay, with that hole placed, we're gonna just set the jig right in place by dropping this bolt in, and we're gonna turn around and do the same for the other side. Now you can remove the bolt. You can save the jig or toss it. It's meant to be disposable. The template is no longer needed, so you can take that off and discard it. Okay, that's the hard part. The easy part now is you just take your mount with the logo facing forward and place it on top of your helmet, and we're just gonna feed the 2 screws into the helmet. So we're gonna feed that into the one side and feed the other screw into the other side. Now we're just going to take a screwdriver and flip the helmet over while we hold it in our hands, and we're going to tighten those Phillips head screws down. Now as I'm tightening these down, I don't need to get these super tight. I'm literally using like 3 fingers of pressure here and just getting them snug, and that's it. Okay, with the base now in place, all you need to do is take the top piece and slide it over the top. You can just set it on top and push straight down. You want to look at it, make sure that your holes are aligned here. And now all you need to do is take your camera, insert your camera into the base, and it should be in a snug fit. It should slide in with just a little bit of force. Get that in place. Slide a washer over your longer bolt that's provided with the kit. And then to get the bolt started, we're going to slide it into the slide here. And you should feel it get a little bit of resistance, and that resistance is because of the rubber pads that mate against the camera. That's part of what keeps the camera tight in place. And all you want to do is set the camera down, put a little bit of force down on it, and I'm not putting much here. I've got maybe 5 pounds of pressure on it, but then your bolt should slide in the rest of the way. You can just push it in until you feel it stop against the nut on the other side here. And then we're going to take the provided Allen wrench and tighten that up. So I'm using the long side of the Allen wrench right now to start the threads and then to get the bolt seated. And once I feel just a little bit of pressure there, I'm just going to take 2 fingers, my index finger and my thumb, and just tighten that up. That should be all you need to keep that camera in place. This is a really solid mount now. There's no need to use the full leverage of the Allen wrench on there. If you go and you really crank down on this thing, it's not necessarily going to hold it any better, and you could potentially end up distorting or damaging the mount. So keep that in mind. Just finger pressure is all you need in order to secure that mount. Lastly, you don't want to forget to insert your top pad, so just turn your helmet back over, reinsert your top pad, and with that back in place, you are now ready to go fly.